Okay, so I'll back up. Let me back up because I forgot to start the recording. Okay. Federal regulation, pretty self-explanatory. Who should report all developments except for those that have not received their 8609 and are still undergoing lease up. You do not have to submit a report. And then as far as the report itself, each development must submit a single PDF file to our email address, which is compliance.htc@mshc.com. If there are any fees that are applicable, those fees must be mailed or can be hand delivered to our office. We ask that those fees are mailed due to COVID regulations and the safety of our staff as well as yours. We do ask that those fees are mailed if they are applicable. There are no upfront fees with the AOC reporting unless you are doing manual processing. So I have a lot of people that ask, is there a fee to actually submit the report? There is not a fee to submit the report. There are only fees applicable if the report is late or if you are doing manual reporting. And if that is the case, then again, we ask that those fees be mailed to our office. But if you must visit our office, please make sure that you are taking the necessary precautions to keep yourself and our staff protected. The AOC report consists of 4 parts. Part A is the owner's certification of continuing compliance, which is the OCCPC, abbreviated. Part B is the supplemental certification of HTC compliance. Part C is the occupancy rent roll report. And Part D is the tax forms. And that is only applicable for developments that receive their 8609s in 2020. So if you all received your 8609s in 2020, then you must submit the signed copy to our office. If you did not receive your 8609s in 2020, either because you already had them, we should already have them on file, or they have not been issued to you yet, then Part D is not applicable. But if you received your 8609s last year, you must submit a copy to us. The signed, finalized copy must be sent to us. Part A and Part C, which we'll go into more detail, they're both online, Part A and Part C. But again, as of last year, Part A was updated, and online, it still has not been updated to reflect the current number count of questions. So the correct form is on our website. That form must be submitted with your report to the email address I mentioned prior. If you only submit via COL, the OCCPC, and you print the OCCPC from COL and do not send us the most current up-to-date copy, you will be written up. That will be a deficiency and it will result in a non-compliance fee. So I reiterate again, the most current forms are on the website. Those are the forms that must be submitted to our email address. Do not print any from COL. The AOC report deadline is April 30th, 2021 at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. That is via email. If you mail your reports, again, they must be received in our office by the end of April. If you are dealing with any COVID-related issues, we ask that you handle those or address the AOC report now and do not wait until April and then ask for an extension due to COVID-related issues. So we ask that you start working on those reports now. You have from now until the end through April to get the information uploaded and submitted to our office. So again, we understand that COVID is still very much alive and there are going to be shortages in your staff within your office. but you have an ample amount of time to get these reports done, and they are going to be due at the end of April. If they were sent by mail, they must be here by 5 p.m. on April 30th, 2021. If not, it will be assessed $100 per day late fee. That is business days. It does not count weekends or holidays. And there is a 5-day grace period before we send out no submit letters and issue 8823. Denied waiver request is I input the wrong email address. Sorry, denied. I forgot to send the report. I'm sorry, it's denied. I forgot what the deadline was. So sorry, it's denied. I sent the report, but I forgot to submit COL. Denied. I forgot to stamp the envelope. So sorry. Fee waivers will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, but these are some of the requests that we've had in the past. Then you guys know right now they will be denied. EUP developments. You all must submit an AOC report. Same process applies, same procedure applies. The administrative fee for the EUP developments is $20 per low income unit and $10 per low income unit for RD properties. All of the fee due notices for the extended use properties have been emailed out. If for some reason you have not received your notice, you will need to let us know ASAP, because those fees must be submitted by the end of April as well. But all fee due notices for extended use properties have been emailed and or mailed. And if you all have not received it, send us an email, let us know. There will be no exceptions on where I didn't get the invoice, because I'm telling you now, they have all been sent out. Check your spam folder, check your junk box. And again, if you have not received it for your property and your property is in the extended use period, please email us and let us know. The AOC checklist gives you a guide to follow in regards to what should be submitted and how. It also is a checks and balances for yourself to make sure that you are submitting everything as you should be. Again, that is on our website and will be included in the program bulletin that will be added to the site later today. This column in the middle is the via email, so it lets you know that these particular items should be submitted via email if they are applicable to your development. All of them will not be applicable to your development, such as Part D. But again, utilize this checklist to make sure you check behind yourself. It is not a big deal if this checklist is submitted with your report or not. It is primarily for you to check behind yourself, but it will not be a big issue if you don't submit this with your report. Do we have any questions so far before we start going over each section? Okay, I don't see anything in the chat, so we'll keep going. All right, so Part A. Again, Part A on the website is not the most current, okay? Part A on our website, the Part A that has 20 questions is the most current form. COL, you do still have to submit it through COL. It will not let you submit your buildings without submitting the OCCPC in COL. Again, it only has 16 questions in COL. Do not worry about that. Do not worry about how the questions are answered. Do not worry about if they're answered correctly. We will not review those through COL. We will review what you submit to us via the PDF email. So how the questions are answered on the OCCPC Part A that is submitted with your report is what you will be reviewed on. We will not review you based on how the questions are answered in COL. So do not even worry about answering them in COL. Just click update the reporting period and hit submit. And again, we will go over COL demonstration, so I will show you exactly what I'm talking about. The purpose of the OCCPC is for the owner of the HCC project to certify to MAC and the IRS that the project has or has not met the requirements of the Section 42 program during the reporting period. Part 1 of the report is the development data. The GP / owner name is the name of the owner or the ownership entity. Development name is the actual name of the property. The address is the address of the property. The development number is not the BIN number. Each development has a development number, so that is what we're looking for a development number. And then the tax ID is the tax ID of the ownership entity, okay? Tax ID of the ownership entity, not the tax ID for the property. The tax ID for the ownership entity of the property. Part 2 is for current development status. It is really only for properties that have been re-syndicated, meaning that they have been awarded credits again. So that part is only for those developments that have received a second round of credits and has been re-syndicated. Question number 1, and we're not going to go through every question, but we're going to go through a lot of the questions that we often see the most errors. Question 1 is about the set aside. This question should be answered based on the election on your 8609s. So if your 8609 is marked 40 at 60, that is what you will mark on question number 1. If your 8609 says 20 at 50, then you would mark 20 at 50. But make sure this question is being answered based on what the election is on your 8609. Question number 3 is in regards to the TIC and support documentation. Basically what this is asking is, did you get a TIC or a SRD, which is a student and rent declaration, and all support documentations and move-in and at research. It's also asking, was this done by the end of the year? Now, there is a waiver. There was a waiver put in place due to COVID. And with that waiver, we allow all of the developments in the state of Mississippi to utilize the student and rent declaration form for all set aside. So it didn't matter if it was a 20%, 30%, 40%, it did not matter. Reason being is because the IRS, true enough, gave a waiver for research, but they did not give a waiver for student status. Student status had to still be verified, regardless of whether you did the recertification or not. To make it a whole lot simpler, the student and rent declaration form not only addresses student status, it also addresses rent and utility allowance. So technically, by you completing that form, the recertification technically was also completed at the same time. This is the reason why we implemented using this one form, this one document, to verify the student status requirement in addition to verifying the rent and the utility allowance. So technically, if this form was completed, the recertification was also completed for 2020. This information was also released in Program Bulletin 20-2807, and it is on our website under Program Bulletins. So again, there should be no development in the state of Mississippi that did not obtain a student and rent declaration form for the year 2020 for their residents. So there will not be any exceptions on, oh, the research wasn't done or they didn't do the research. Does anybody have any questions on this before I move on? Okay, I see no questions in the chat. Question number 4. I got one question. So the question is that this particular site obtained student status forms based on the conversation they had with us and guidance that they received after the notice was released. In that program bulletin, there was a window given to go back and do it for those developments that had not done it. So as long as it's been done and you did get the form by the end of the year, you'll be fine. Since we did not do any audits last year, technically you all caught the issue, you all fixed the issue. So as long as you have a student rent declaration form, whether it was done by the time the bulletin was released or after, you will be fine as long as you have it documented by the end of the year. So it'll be late, true enough, but we don't write it up for being late. I'm assuming that I answered your question, Anne Marie. Okay, question number 4, student status. Again, did you obtain an SRD or student status certification in moving and net research? As long as you obtain the SRD, then this question will be answered as yes, just like it's question number 3. Question number 5, was there any instances of rental overages? Hopefully none of you all had any instances of rental overages, but this is what this question is asking. Did you have any rental overages on your property for any of your units? Question number 8 is physical violations. If you had any, hold on one second. If you had any physical inspection by our agency or any other agency, did you pass the first inspection is what it's asking. This question is probably going to be the same for everyone because not only our agency was not doing physical inspections, there were many others that were not. So unless you had fire, flood, or anything of that nature, pretty much everybody should be okay. Like I said, we did have a couple that had some fires that we were aware of. But like I say, our agency and other agencies were not doing physical inspections last year, so this question is probably going to be the same for everybody. Okay, so someone piggyback off of Anne Marie's question in regards to the student rent declaration form, and the piggyback was if the student status form was obtained, would that be okay in lieu of the student rent declaration form? Yes, it would be okay, but again, the whole concept and purpose of implementing the student rent declaration form is to not only address the student status, but to also document the research. Some developments, by choice, choose to do full research, even though it's not a requirement for MAC based on certain stipulations. But there are some developments that continue to do full recertifications. So MAC's purpose of implementing that one form was to not only address the student status issue, but to also document that the research was done. The IRS main purpose of recertifications is to document rental overages and student status. That is the main reason to document recertifications is to make sure the student status has been addressed and to make sure the rent and the utility allowance has been addressed. Since that is the case, that it was the primary reason why we implemented the student and rent declaration form over the student status, so that the recert would be addressed and the student status would be addressed. Now, again, if you all only obtain the student status certification form and did not do the SRD, that is fine, but you will have a lot of units that will be flagged for missing recertifications. You will not be written up for it, but once this waiver has been lifted, then you will have to pick back up where you left off, and there may be a gap in between when the last recert was done and when you all started again. A lot of developments like to stay on track and keep everything consistent and keep the flow going. They don't like to have a big gap in between, but again, those waivers are in place for those developments that have the gap and choose to have that gap. But for those that want to keep moving forward and keep everything consistent and flowing, if you did the student and rent declaration form for 2020, you will still be on track. When you do the recert for 2021, if the waiver is still in place, again, you utilize that one form and the recert is done and the student status is addressed. So I have another question that says, if the development is a layered development and they continue to do full research, are they okay? Yes, you are okay. Again, that was a choice to continue to do the full research, but you had the option of using the SRD. I know for the layered properties, if you have HUD or RD, that option was not available to you all, but for the tax credit side, you did have the option of utilizing the SRD for all set-asides across the board. But if you did continue to do full research, then yes, you are fine. Any questions on question number 8 before I move on? Okay. All right, question number 13. Question number 13 is asking, do you have a lure? Does that lure have the language that says you cannot refuse to lease to an applicant with a Section 8 voucher? Mostly all of the developments have a lure in place that has that verbiage in it. This is not applicable to developments that buildings were placed in service in 1987 through 1989. And most of those are not even still in the program. Question number 14 is asking, are you complying with all terms as agreed to in the application? So whatever the terms are in your application, are you complying with those terms and are you implementing those terms on your property? Are you operating under them? Or do you have the MAOI, the amenities, veteran set-asides, deeper targeting, 30%, 50%? That is what that question is asking. Question number 15 is in regards to nonprofits. If your property has a nonprofit participation or not, this question is for you. If nonprofit is not even applicable to you, you would answer NA for number 15. If it is, we do need the nonprofit addendum submitted with your report. This is a snippet of the nonprofit addendum. Number 16 and 17 are answered incorrectly most often. 16 and 17 is only for developments that were foreclosed or went through the qualified contract process. If the property was foreclosed or went through the qualified contract process, there is a totally different report that's required for those developments. And so if this is not applicable to you, you are still under your operating agreement, you're still within the program. 16 and 17 are going to be NA. 16 and 17 are going to be NA unless your property was foreclosed or went through the qualified contract process last year. Number 18 is in regards to VAWA, which is Violence Against Women's Act. VAWA was initially signed into law September of 1994. It is advisable to have a VAWA addendum in place. It is not mandatory, but it is advisable. Question number 19 is in regards to property damage. Did your property suffer any type of casualty loss or damage in 2020? If the development sustained, I meant to change it to 2020 instead of 2019, I apologize. But if the property sustained any damage in 2020 that resulted in the displacement of a resident and or placed a unit or building out of service for at least 30 days, mark no and complete the notice of physical damage form. Just as a heads up, there is going to be verbiage added to the compliance manual in regards to the time frame as to when a development or owner is required to report to MAC property damage. Right now, there isn't any verbiage in there in regards to that. And so it will be added this year, so be on the lookout for that. We have a lot of developments that do not report property damage at all, and we found out about it later. So there is going to be violations implemented and added to the manual in regards to when it is required that the owner must report property damage to our agency and the penalties that will be associated with if it is not done and we find out about it at a later point. The OCCPC must be signed by the owner or authorized individual, which must be known by our office. If you are unsure if the individual is authorized to sign or not, you can always email to ask. Electronic signatures are still acceptable this year. We had some people last year that asked for extensions because their owner was not in the country. Sorry, that is not acceptable. We implemented electronic signatures last year. Electronic signatures are still in place this year. You do not have to have the form notarized as long as we can identify the signature as being one of the person that is authorized in our system. Notary is not necessary. Electronic signatures are okay. Any questions on part A before we move on to part B? All right, moving on to part B. Part B is the supplemental certification form. It certifies to the compliance with state-specific requirements set forth by the development's final housing tax credit application. So these are items that you were scored on in the original application during the time of allocation. So that is the purpose of part B. And so those questions should be answered based on the application that's applicable to your development. When you're going through answering the questions, if you answer yes, that means that that was an elected item on the application and that you did comply with that item. If you answer the question as no, that means that that was, again, an elected item on your application, but you did not comply with that item. And then if you answer the question in A, that is stating that the item was not elected on your application and was not applicable to you at all. Question number 4 in regards to special needs. There is a special needs log that must be accompanied with question number 4. The required number of units that have been set aside for qualified special need populations. If your development is 100% elderly, then this does not apply to you. You do not have to fill this form out if your development is 100% elderly. But if you have MAOI veterans, disabled, not 100% elderly, but you have elderly, but you're not 100% elderly, then this does apply to you. So any type of special needs that is on your property and it's not 100%, if it's anything less than 100%, then this is applicable to you if you have special needs on your property, as being a part of the application. Not necessarily that you have residents that have special needs. That's not what we're asking. Question number 6 is in regards to community services. Again, there was a COVID and is a COVID waiver in place in regards to community services. So do not worry if they were not done. You do not have to send us anything saying, I didn't do my community services because of COVID. We already know you didn't do them because we told you that you didn't have to do them. So please do not type up a letter stating why they wasn't done and referring us back to the program bulletin that we issued. We already know it. Save the trees. Question number 7, again with the amenities. We are already aware that a lot of the amenities were not open and available to your residents. You do not have to make us aware again. So the amenities, as long as they were there, as long as you didn't tear the playground down and burn it down to the ground, you'll be fine. And hopefully no one filled their pool in with cement. Amenities are things such as playground, volleyball, basketball court, swimming pool. Sheila, don't be laughing, because I will have some that say, oh, well, we didn't have to offer the playground, and so we just removed it. No. Or the swimming pool was closed, and it's probably going to be closed forever, so we filled it in. No. Question number 10 in regards to DBRA, which is development-based rental assistance. This question is often answered incorrectly as well. Your development must have at least 51% of development-based rental assistance. This is not asking about RD assistance. This is not asking about HUD vouchers. It's not asking any of that. This is specifically referring to development-based rental assistance. This is a reminder that whatever is on this chart must also be submitted to us via the financial statement, general ledger, the owner rental assistance agreement. We must have backup documentation to support the information that you all are reporting to us on question number 10. If the support documentation is not provided, it will be written up. We must also be able to identify these same units in COL. So you can't say that in January you issued development-based rental assistance to 10 units and in COL we only see 2. You cannot pocket the money, you got to get the money out. If you say it's 10, we need to see 10. In COL, we need to see 10 on your financial statements that will be sent with the report, but everything must add up and line up. Make our lives easier by giving us what we asked for the first time so that it will be a breeze and you will get a compliance letter the first go round and we don't have to do the back and forth. The first subsidy payment date is not the first of the year, so it's not going to be 1/1/21 unless for some reason you just started well, I'm sorry, 1/1/20, unless for some reason you just started issuing payments in 1/1/20. It is going to be the date that you first issued a subsidy payment. The total credits is the total for the reporting year. So the total that was issued out for 2020. I have a question in regards to number 7 about amenities. The question is, will question 7 be answered yes if the amenities were available? That is correct. Again, hopefully no one tore their playground down or filled their pool in with cement. But as long as the amenities were available, but due to COVID were not being utilized and or were closed due to COVID only, then yes, you would still answer question number 7 as yes. Because COVID was not your fault, is not your fault, and is the sole reason why the amenities were not made available. Also, with question number 10, there are some notes at the bottom. Note number 2 is in regards to project-based, Section 8 rental assistance, public housing authority, project-based vouchers, or project-based annual contribution contracts. You would answer question number 10 applicably, but you would not fill out the log. So if you have public housing assistance, project-based Section 8 rental assistance, project-based vouchers, or a project-based annual contract, you would answer number 10 as yes, but you do not fill out the chart. The only developments that complete the chart are those developments that have development-based rental assistance, and that development-based rental assistance is a set amount. The amount is not going to fluctuate. It's not going to be $100 this month and $2,000 the next month, $5,000 the next month. That is not development-based rental assistance. It is a set amount that is issued each month to a set number of units. If that is the case for your development, then you have development-based rental assistance as long as it's 51% or more. If you have less than 51%, then this does not apply to you. Note number 3, again, reiterates what I just said. The development-based rental assistance is something that is provided by the owner, okay? So if the owner is not the one that's providing the assistance, then again, you more than likely have PHA or PBV or something of that nature. Any questions on Part B before we move on to Part C? Okay, I don't see it in the chat. All right, so Part C, the purpose of the occupancy report is to obtain eligibility information of qualified households as it relates to household size, income, student status, and rent. It also is to obtain the history of the move-in, the move-outs, and the research. It is done through COL. If you're doing manually, you would use the occupancy report that is on our website. Again, the same information must be provided on that report. And again, if you're doing manual processing, it is a manual processing fee applicable. So there are 2 ways to submit the tenant data. The first and most preferable way is via COL. If for some reason you don't have access to COL, please let us know by March 16th. After March 16th, we cannot guarantee that you'll get a response back in a timely manner for you to be able to access COL. So please get those requests in to us by March 16th. Manual processing, there is a fee that is applicable. Again, the reports must be to us by the end of April, if not before. The fee must also be mailed and or brought to our office. We will not process the manual processing. We do not have the manual processing fee. And if for some reason we receive the report and don't receive the fee after April 30th, you will incur the $100 a day late fee as if the report was never submitted. Online submission of Part C is required. The work save your work as you progress through. It will automatically update as you save, and you do have the ability to upload an XML file from your own software. For those that use OneSite and some of the other programs, they should be familiar with the scheme as far as how the data should be formatted. If for some reason your software system is not set up that way, please do not wait until the last minute to let us know, because there will be no exceptions on it going beyond the due date. We ask that you let us know if there are any issues that you have with COL or submitting this data to us sooner than later. Do not wait until April 29th at 5:45 p.m. and send an email because you're frantic with trying to get this information in, and you just started working on it on April 28th at 2 p.m. If you're choosing to do manual, it's a $40 per unit, not per development, but per unit manual processing fee. There must be one form submitted per building using an Excel spreadsheet, Part C, and you must attach the TIC and the demographic profile form if the form does not include their demographics. If the form has the demographics, don't worry about the demographic profiling form. Even if you don't submit the demo, it's not a big deal. We're not going to write you up for it, but we must have the TIC. The SRD does not have the demographic profile information on it, so if you submit the TIC, then you're going to have to submit the demo. Common mistakes that we see in COL is submitting only the OCCPC and nothing else. Submitting the OCCPC and don't submit the buildings. Failing to input all the rent and the utility allowance changes. Inputting rental subsidy amount in the incorrect field. Not entering recertifications. Answering questions incorrectly, and not providing support documentation when corrections are submitted for review. The utility allowance must be submitted with your report. It must be for the applicable reporting year. And if there were any changes in the UA throughout the year, you must submit both copies. So if you had a UA in place from January through April, and then it changed in May through the end of the year, we should have 2 utility allowances submitted with your report. If it is not submitted, you will be written up. It must also have where it is from, that it is pertinent to your county and unit type. It must have the date. So if this is 2020 reporting year, we shouldn't have a utility allowance from 2018. It must also have the number, so it must already be calculated. Please do not send us a blank utility allowance. We do not and cannot calculate your utility allowances for you. We have entirely too many developments to review, and we cannot calculate it for you. So please make sure it is calculated. The numbers are visible. They have been added to the form, and they are the same as in COL. We have a lot of developments that submit a utility allowance that have totally different numbers than what is in COL. So I have a question asking, is there a way to upload how many times a UA was changed in COL? Yes. COL has an option for rent changes. And when you go in and do an update, you will go in and do the update in that screen. When we go through the demonstration, I will show you where that screen is, which is the rent screen. If you're submitting a rural development utility allowance, again, the dates, the name of the development, the numbers, all that information must be visible on the form. With the RD utility allowances, there is a second page. That is a signature page. That page must be submitted as well. The HUD utility allowances, same thing. The date, the numbers, signature, all of that must be submitted if you're utilizing one of these as your utility allowances for your development. Any questions on Part C before we go into Part D and pause for intermission before I go into the demonstration? All right, so Part D is only for developments that received their 8609s in 2020. You must send us a signed copy of the 8609s with your report. If you're multiple building election, we do also need the multiple building election project listing in addition to the signed 8609s. Here's a snippet of the bottom section of the 8609. This is a section that must be completed and signed by the owner. The entire form must be submitted to us. Please do not snip out the bottom section of the form and only send us a screenshot of it. You must send us the whole form for each building. All right, are there any questions before we pause so I can get set up for COL demonstration? Also, if there's anyone that does not want to stay on for the COL demonstration, you're more than welcome to leave. But again, I must advise that the system does look different. It still operates the same, but it does look different. So if there's anyone that wants to leave, you're more than welcome to leave. Thank you for being a part of the webinar this morning. And anyone that wants to stay on for the presentation of COL, you're more than welcome to stay on. But do we have any questions before I pause to grab some water and get set up for COL? So I have a question that says that they know that you're not to use the documents in COL, but you all do need to submit the AOC via email and COL correct. That is correct. Part A, which is the OCCPC in COL, has not been updated. If you look at the OCCPC in COL, you will only see 16 questions. The OCCPC has 20 questions. The most current and up-to-date forms are on our website. There should be no forms printed from COL, none whatsoever. You would submit the most current up-to-date OCCPC that is on our website, MAC's website. So that is the OCCPC that will be submitted with your AOC report via email. But COL will not allow you to submit your buildings without submitting the OCCPC first. You have to submit it in COL first. Otherwise, you will not be able to submit your building. Do not worry about how to answer the questions in COL. Do not worry about whether it's right or wrong, because we will not review it from COL. Just go in, update the reporting period, hit submit. All right, so I'm going to take a break and I will be back. All righty. So is everybody able to see my screen? I have COL homepage pulled up. Great. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great. All righty. Okay, so this is COL. This is what it would look like when you first log in. Like I said, the new site is a little different, looks a little different, but for the most part, it still operates the same. So for my particular homepage, I have access to more than one development. So mine may look a little different than yours if you're only assigned to one development. But if you're assigned to multiple developments, then this is what your home screen will look like. To see all of your developments, you will hit View All. And so it'll give you a list of your developments. The magnifying glass over to the left is how you can view the development. It also is going to be the same as far as viewing the units, which I'll show you that as well. So that is different. To access or proceed to your buildings, you can proceed one of two ways. You can hit proceed to buildings by selecting the property and hit proceed to buildings. I don't know where that green line came from. Or you can click the number under buildings and it'll do the same thing. Okay. If you are doing the XML upload by build or by project, select the project and up here at the top, hit import all building data. You would choose the XML file on your computer. Do not check the box for overwrite existing unit activities. Again, do not check this box. If you're uploading for the first time for this year, do not check this box. Once you have selected the file, hit upload document. It'll go through the process. If there are any issues with the file, it'll tell you that there are issues with the file. If it uploads successfully, it'll tell you it uploads successfully, but if you do have any issues with the upload, like I say, it will tell you what the issue is. If you are unable to fix the issue, then send us an email and let us know. Please send a screenshot of the error message that you received so that we are aware of what the error is, and also attach the XML file in addition to the screenshot of the error so that we can analyze it to see if we are able to identify what the problem is. For the most part, we are able to easily fix the issue. Sometimes we do have to get the developer involved. Yes, there is audio. Is anyone unable to hear me? I only have one person right now saying that they cannot hear me. Okay, perfect. All right, so again, like I said, choose your file. Do not check this box. Hit upload document. If there are any errors, send a screenshot of the errors. Attach the XML file in your email. If for some reason you try to upload the first time and there's an error and you know specifically what the error is and you know how to fix the error, go ahead and fix the error. When you come back to try to upload the file, at that point, you would need to check this box, okay? The reason being is because you have uploaded information one time and there was something that you had to fix. So you have to overwrite what you've already uploaded, okay? That's the only instance where you're going to check this box. Outside of that, if you're uploading for the first time, do not check this box initially. Okay, the OCCPC, again, the OCCPC must be submitted first before you submit your tenant data. So the easiest way would be when you first come in and you're getting started on working on your tenant data, go ahead and start with the OCCPC first. You will select your project and hit annual owner certification. I have a question in regards to what XML version do we use. You will need to speak with your software provider because they should be familiar with Emphasis. Emphasis is the software that we use, and there is a specific format that the XML file must be in order for the system to accept it. So you will need to get with your system provider, whether it's OneSite, Yardi, or some of the others, to make sure that the XML setup is on the same format as what will be accepted by Emphasis. Yardi and OneSite both are very familiar with Emphasis, so they should not have an issue or not understand what you're asking for. But the file is going to be .xml. If you're asking for the file type, it's going to be .xml. And it's something that is extracted from your system. So the file would be extracted from Yardi or extracted from OneSite, and then you would take that file, save it to your computer, and then upload it into COL for it to read the data and populate all of the information for you. Okay. Okay, annual owner cert. So remember, the annual owner cert in COL is not correct. As you can see, it only has 16 questions. The most current form has 20. Again, we do not care how these questions are answered. We will not review from COL. The only thing you will have to do here is update the certification period. Once you do that, scroll to the bottom, hit save to make sure it did save it, and then hit submit. It asks, are you sure you want to submit it? You're going to hit OK. OCCPC has been submitted. You're done. Very simple. Update the reporting period, save it, submit it. Done. In COL. You still have to go and do the actual Part 8 form. And on there, you need to make sure those 20 questions are answered correctly and submit that with your report in the PDF file that you send to our email address. From here, now we're going to go into the updating the building tenant data. Again, you can access the buildings from two ways. Select the project, hit proceed to buildings, or select the project and click on the number of buildings. Both will take you to the same. Okay. This particular project only has 3 buildings. You want to make sure the last report date on all of your buildings reflect 12/31/2019. If there are any buildings that has a last report date that does not say 12/31/2019, there is an issue. Do not ignore this and submit the tenant data as is. This is the first column that you should look at when you are accessing your buildings. And every single column should have 12/31/2019. The only developments that should not have this in their column is those that are on quarterly reporting. And if you're on quarterly reporting, then you would not be doing annual reporting, and your last report date would be different. But everybody that's on annual reporting, that's not doing quarterly, last report date should be 12/31/2019. As you can see, I have a building that says 12/31/2018. So that means that I never submitted 2019 data. So how can I submit 2020 data? The system will let me submit 2020 data, but guess what? We're going to kick it back. You're going to be written up, and now you have to go and undo what you've already done. So please make sure you pay attention to this column. This is the first column that you should look at. Every building 12/31/2019. The next column is the report, the current reporting period. Okay, I have not updated it yet. I'm about to do that now. To update the current reporting period, you can select any building. I'm going to start with building 1, and I'm going to click change report period. Enter the dates of the reporting period. And so that you do not have to do this for every single building, check this box. Update all buildings and hit save. Your changes have been successfully saved. When you go back to the project, they've been updated. As you can see, I only selected building 1, but because I checked that box, it updated building 2 as well. It did not touch building 3 because, again, building 3 hasn't even been submitted for 2019. So again, discrepancy, discrepancy. Both of these columns should be consistent. If they're not, there's an issue, okay? Any questions so far? All right. So at the very beginning, I talked about the import building data. From this screen here, when you select your project, you have the option to import all building data, okay? The import all building data means that you're going to input every single building's data for this project. That is done from this screen. Sometimes when you try to import every single building all at one time, you run into problems. I always advise to do building by building, but there are some developments that are able to do all of the buildings at one time and they have no issue. It is much easier to do it building by building. But if you do import all building data from the main project screen, you would be inputting every single building's tenant data all at one time. If you do the import building data from the building screen, you will be uploading building by building. Did I confuse anybody with the difference? Okay, I don't see any questions. All right. So from this screen, like I said, if you're going to upload XML from the building screen, select your building, hit import building data. Process is still the same. If you're going to manually submit or manually input the tenant data, select your building and hit proceed to units. This particular building only has one resident in it. So to input the new tenant cert, you're going to select the unit and hit new tenant cert. Since the COVID waiver is in place, then we don't have a whole lot to update, okay? So we're going to enter the new tenant cert. So I'm just going to input 06/11/2020. Hit save. Update his date of birth. And as you can see, every time I try to hit save, if there's an issue, it's going to tell me. Right now, you'll also notice that on the left-hand side, this is the only tab I have, is general information. But watch what happens when I hit save. I now have access to the other information. So in my unit rent tab is where I will update the rent change. I think someone asked about updating rent changes throughout. So this is where we would do that update on the rent change. So we'll say his rent went up to $565 and his utility allowance went to $120. In the first segment where we talked about the common errors with COL, I mentioned that rental subsidy is oftentimes put into the utility allowance column or box. So make sure you're entering the numbers in the correct field, okay? But we do have had some instances where if he was receiving $500 rental subsidy and a 120 UA, this would be 500 here, and this would be 0 here. And so what's gonna happen is you got a gross rent of $1,065. Well, it's gonna flag it as being over rent. Why? Because you inputted a utility allowance of 500 plus his rent of 565. If you notice, if his rental subsidy was 500 and his UA is 120, the only thing that's being factored is his rent and his utility allowance, because rental subsidy is not a part of gross rent. So you see the difference? And also, again, you can look at the gross rent column here. It will give you the total. And if you know this total is not correct, then you inputted something wrong here. Everyone follow me so far? Okay, so once this has been updated, all right, so I asked for one more time, okay? So at the rent change section, we're gonna input the rent change date, okay? Tenant paid rent is the rent that you receive from the tenant. So if the tenant gives you $565 every month as their rent, that goes in that column, in that field. If you have rental subsidy, meaning Section 8 or D, then that goes in the rental subsidy field. Your utility allowance goes in the utility allowance field. The last column is the total. This is the gross rent, okay? Rental subsidy is not counted as gross rent. So tenant paid rent plus utility allowance gives you gross rent. The only other factor that's factored into gross rent is mandatory charges and RHS rental overage, okay? So as long as you have the fields inputted correctly and your gross rent is correct, then you're good. Make sure that your rental subsidy is in the correct column, because if it's not, if you accidentally input it as the utility allowance because you're not paying attention, look what happens right here to the gross rent. It changes. So now you're more than likely going to have a rental overage because you put the rental subsidy in the wrong column, in the wrong field. I don't know why I keep saying column, but you put it in the wrong field. So make sure that the numbers that you're inputting are inputted in the correct field, okay? Tenant paid rent, rental subsidy, utility allowance, gross rent $685. Once that's done, hit save, and it saves the information. At this point, you can close it out. So now this tenant has been updated for 2020. So if you want to add a tenant, again, just select the tenant, hit new tenant cert. I will add myself. As you can see, there are certain fields that have a red asterisk. Those fields are mandatory and will not let you bypass unless you complete them. With this being a new move-in, my move-in date and my cert date is going to be the same. As you can see, the box is checked that this is an initial certification. My unit type, I don't have any assistance. My owner designation, I am a low-income housing tax credit unit. My family size, I have 2, counting myself. I I can enter my household income here if I want to, but once I hit save, you'll see I have some more options over here on the left. Okay, Sheila, I'll get to your question in just a second on the UA. All right, so once I hit save, and just to point out, I am in a test system with COL. If I wasn't in the test system, I would have a section for my occupants as well as my income. But because I'm in the test session, I don't have these options over here on the left. But if I wasn't in the test session, then once I hit save, then you would see household information, income information, asset information, and then unit rent, okay? Again, the process is still the same. Once you hit save, you'll see those options pop up on the left. Go in and enter the information, hit save as you go. Do it for the household occupants, the income, assets, and then you will have this last one that says unit rent, okay? So that process is no different, so don't be scared. What I just did here on this first screen, it'll be the same concept once you're going through and entering the tenant data. So what was my move in? I forgot. When I moved in, okay, June 1st. All right, so hit edit, June 1st, 2020. I'll just say my rent was $650. I had a $150 UA. Gross rent is $800. Save and close. When you hit save and close, it takes you back to the main screen. So to answer Sheila's question in regards to what if you have a UA change that happens after move-in, you would select the unit and then you would select new cert. And if I had a UA change on August 1st, 2020, hit save. That unit rent pops back up, hit edit, August 1st, 2020, and say it went to 170, hit save and close. And now it's been updated. Yes, that's the only way to input it in the system that way. Now, as I mentioned in the first session of the training, in regards to utility allowances that change throughout the year, as long as you provide us a copy of all the utility allowance changes throughout that year, if for some, like when I first inputted myself, I had it, and my move-in was 6120, and my UA was 150. Okay, so in August, my UA went up to 170. So right now, the way the system is set up, yes, you do have to go in and enter a new cert. There is a lot of work to do, okay? So even if you do not go in here and enter a new cert with the UA change, as long as you have provided the utility allowance with your report, and it's identifiable that from January through June, it was this, from August to December, it was this, then you will be okay. Because right now, the way the system is set up, yes, you do have to go in there and enter a new cert every single time if you have a UA change. So the key is to make sure that you submit the UA change documentation with your report, and we can easily identify the period that the utility allowance was in place. And we cannot identify when the UA was in place, when it started, when it stopped. And if we pull your report and we see 150, and you send us two utility documents, and we cannot identify that, okay, from January to May it was this, and from August to December it was this, then we will write you up for that, because we could not identify the period that the utility allowance was applicable for. So the easiest thing to do is not have to have us to think about it and or wonder if this was applicable here and if this was applicable there. Make it easy for us and easily identify that, okay, this is what was applicable here, this is what was applicable there, okay? All right, got a call coming in. All right, so let's see, I have another question. So if the tenant do not pay rent and have paid the full amount, so we enter your utility allowance and a subsidy amount. That is correct. So if you have a tenant that has zero rent, HUD pays 100%, then for the tenant rent, it'll be zero. You'll enter the rental subsidy and the utility allowance, hit save. Okay, so I have a question. After you save and close, how do you modify a current cert? To modify, you will hit the magnifying glass and hit edit. It will only, and this is for Paula, it will only allow you to modify if you have not submitted it to us. If you have already submitted the tenant data to us, you will not be able to modify it because it's already been processed through the system. But so long as you have not submitted the tenant data, you still have the access and the ability to modify. So to modify, again, hit the magnifying glass over here to the left. And then hit edit, and it'll let you modify what you need to modify. If for some reason this information is just wrong altogether and you have not submitted it through the system, you can delete it. Now it shows 3 different entries, okay? The reason it shows these 3 different entries is because I entered in my move-in, and then I came in and I entered in a new cert, and then I came in and I entered in a rent change. But say I need to go backtrack to my move-in, okay? So I would delete this last one that I entered, which was the rent change. It's gone. I would delete this entry here because this is a new cert, and I need to get back to my move-in. So I'm gonna delete this one also. All right, it's gone. So now it takes me back to my move-in, okay? That's how you backtrack yourself. If for some reason you did something wrong and you don't want to modify, you just want to fix it from beginning to end, then that's how you backtrack. You go to delete tenant cert. But again, you only have the option to do this if you have not submitted the data through the system. Once you've sent that data through the system, you do not have the ability to do any type of deletions or editing. We will have to do it on our side. So we ask, we stress, we beg, we plead that you make sure this data is correct before you send it through. Please make sure it's correct before you send it through, because it takes a lot of steps and it takes a lot of undoing to fix something that especially that has layers on top of it. And what I mean by layers on top of it is new certifications on top of what we're trying to correct. Because on our side, even we don't have the access to just single out the move-in and you have research on top of it. We too have to delete all of the research and then fix the move-in and then enter all the information back in, okay? So please, we stress, we beg, we plead that this information is correct before you hit submit. Is the UA changes going to automatically give us an error message? I'm not sure about an error message because I did not show an error message on the UA changes. Like I say, if you're going to go through the system and do the UA changes, then unfortunately it's going to generate a new cert in the system. The other option again is to submit all the utility allowance changes throughout the year to us. With your report, enter in the most current data in COL. As long as we can identify it on your utility allowance what happened, then you'll be fine. But we have some developments that in COL, the UA is 150. We get a utility allowance that says 200 and nothing else to go off of other than 150 in COL and 200 on the actual utility allowance. Then yes, that is a big discrepancy. There's a $50 difference and we have no explanation to go with it. Please do not delete any units, okay? There are no reason for you to delete a unit. This is what these X's are over here to the right. Do not delete any units. Also, do not hit new unit. New unit is not the same as a new cert. When you hit new unit, you're adding an actual unit to this building, okay? So there's no reason why anybody should be hitting new unit. If we have the information on our side, all of your units should be there. So there should be no reason why anybody should be adding a unit. Unit definition gives you the definition of this particular unit. So it tells you it's unit 2, it's a 2-bedroom, square footage is 600. It is a LIHTC unit, okay? That's all unit definition tells you is the information about that particular unit. You do have income and rent tests. So COL will test the unit for you to let you know if there are any issues with the unit. You can actually test unit by unit or building by building. New tenant cert, we just went over that. Delete tenant cert, we went over that. If you need to move out a current tenant, so Brandon was already here. He moved out in September, so I will select Brandon's unit, which is unit 1, and hit move out. I'll put his move out date. If it was an eviction, I would put non-payment of rent, okay, and move him out. Once I move him out, as you can see, it makes the unit vacant. If for some reason you did not mean to move him out, again, you have the option to delete what you did. Select the unit, hit delete tenant cert. And here you're going to delete the vacant. So the vacant means this is the move out. This first column means, okay, this is the move out. So I need to delete this move out because I did not mean to move him out. Hit the red X to the right, hit okay. And now he is back as being the occupant of that unit. All right, so if you need to do a unit transfer, select the unit, hit unit transfer. If your development is set up for unit transfers, you'll pick the new unit that he's transferring to. And the effective date, enter in all of the rent information, hit transfer. It will transfer him to a new unit. So I'm going to transfer him from 1 to unit 6. So now he is no longer in 1, he's in 6. Unit transfers are very simple. So from here, once you go through and check every unit, make sure all of the units have been updated, all the tenant data has been added or removed. You're going to hit ready all units. So it tells you all units have been successfully ready. So this ready column is now all green. And so what that means is that I'm ready to submit the tenant data for all of the tenants in this building. I cannot submit from this screen, so I do have to hit close to get back to the building screen. And the buildings can only be submitted building by building. There is no way to do a mass submission of the buildings, okay? You only can submit building by building. To know whether or not a building is ready to submit, you have this tenant research status column, and it'll tell you whether or not the building is ready to submit or not. I have a question in regards to the SRD. If you use the SRD, how do you transmit the form, or is it part of the setup? There is not a transmit, you do not have to send us the SRD. The SRD is no different than a TIC at research and the SRD at research. So, I mean, that part of it is no different. If you obtain the SRD, then when you go to update your units, So if I was already here, well, Brandon was already here in 2020. So I would pull out the SRD, I would enter new tenant cert, enter in the date, the effective date of the cert. So if the effective date was 12/1/2020, I will enter in the effective date of that cert, hit save. The middle section of the SRD has the rent utility allowance information. So when you go to the rent tab, hit edit. That's where you're entering in this information here from the SRD and hit save. That's all you have to do with the SRD. You do not have to send it to us. Does MAC enter MTSP limits for each property? When we run income and rent tests, we have units showing as over rent limit. However, the effective date is 4/24/19. This was the effective date of the 2019 MTSP limits. The 2020 limits need to be entered. Okay. If you are having issues with rental overages for your property, it is not an issue with the income limits. It is an issue with the development setup. Your development has to be specifically labeled to be able to allow it to test based on the MTSP limits. So if you are having an issue with your property flagging and you know for 100% sure fact that you're supposed to be using the MTSP limits, send me an email so I can check your development setup, because there is a separate item that has to be done with your development in order for it to test based on those limits. Next question, if you transfer from a different size unit, how do you update the rent in UA? It's no different. So if I go and I transfer, well, this building is all 2 bedrooms. It still should be the same. Okay, so if I go and I do unit transfer, and I'm transferring from unit 2 to unit 9, and for the sake of saying, let's say unit 9 is a 3 bedroom, that doesn't matter. The bedroom size doesn't matter. So if I go and transfer on November 20th, I'm going to enter in what the tenant paid rent is for the 3 bedroom, what the utility allowance is for the 3 bedroom, and then hit transfer. That process is not going to change. So transfers are not only specifically to bedroom size. As long as your property has the ability to transfer, you can transfer from a 2 to a 1 to a 3 to a 4, it doesn't matter. The process is still going to be treated the same as COL. On the general information page at unit type of assistance, if the resident receives housing assistance, do we select anything for this unit, or should it be no assistance? So on the general information tab, unit assistance type, you have 4 options. You have no assistance, other, project-based, or tenant-based. Okay, tenant-based is Section 8, PVV, PRV, HUD assistance, that's tenant-based, okay? Because the rent portion is based on the tenant's income. That's what tenant-based means. Project-based means that the income is based on project-based assistance received by the tenant. Other could be anything you can think of that you may consider to be other that does not fit a project or tenant. And then no assistance is those residents that do not receive any assistance whatsoever. Okay. So for the question in regards to residents that receive housing assistance, that would be tenant-based. You can do tenant-based, you can do other, you can do no assistance. This field here is not going to hurt anything if you by chance select the wrong option. It is a required field, so you do have to select something, but it's not going to be a flag. It shouldn't generate a flag if you by chance select the wrong thing. But it is a mandatory field, so you do have to answer it. All right, so last thing I was speaking on before I started answering questions with regards to making the units ready. Again, you have this button here that can ready all of the units. Once you have identified that you've entered in all the information for the units, hit ready all units. That box would be checked. And then once that's done, go back to the building page. And from here is where you can actually submit the tenant data. So once the building has been made ready, you'll select the building and hit submit tenant service. So we have a lot of people that receive this box that says, oh my God, this building is out of compliance. Oh my God, what am I gonna do? Oh my God, what's wrong? Oh my God, can you please help me? Guys, if you know that what you have entered is correct, please do not email us asking us what's wrong. We will not review any building or tenant data that has been submitted to us prior to April, okay? I'm telling you right now, we're not gonna do it. There is no way for us to go in and look at each and every building out of over 600 properties in the state of Mississippi to be able to tell you what's wrong with the building. There is no way possible. You can, however, ask us to send it back, okay? If you feel like you messed up on something, you say, oh my God, I forgot to do this, can you return it? We can return it to you, no problem. But we will not analyze or look to see what is wrong with a building. Prior to May, we will not do it. So if you ask, you will be denied. I'm sorry, but we cannot. We have over 600 developments in the state of Mississippi. There is no way possible we can't do that. So please, before you even type that email and waste your time, we will not, and we cannot. A lot of times when we see this out, when you see this out of compliance, that does not necessarily mean your building is out of compliance, okay? This does not mean your building is out of compliance. It could be, but then again, it could not be. The reason I say that is because our system is very tedious. And what I mean by that is it sometimes tests for things that are not necessarily non-compliance items. An example of that would be transient housing, okay? Transient housing means that a tenant occupied a unit for less than 6 months. And our system will flag it as being an issue. When we review it, it's not an issue. We push it through. But for the sake of saying that this building, all they had was transient housing. There were no other issues with this building other than transient housing. And as you can see, it's flagged for out of compliance. We're gonna push it through because we don't write up transient housing. So we're gonna push it through. But simply because you've seen out of compliance, you're freaking out. Please don't do that. If you know you entered the information correctly, do not worry about this out of compliance, okay? Now, if you feel like you didn't, or you feel like you messed up, then again, like I said, you can submit a request for us to return the building. But do not submit a request asking us, can we look to see what's wrong, because we're not gonna do it. Once the building has been submitted, you will see this column that says submitted, and that lets you know that this building has been submitted. This column should say submitted for all buildings. That's the only way that you will know that every building has been submitted. If it does not say submitted, then you did not submit a building. That's the same for the OCCPC. You will have a last submission date right here, as well as the status saying submitted. So you should have submitted on your property, on your project screen, and on your building screen. They all should be submitted. There are also reports in the system that you can pull for your building to check behind yourself before you send it to us. You have the option of the annual occupancy report. Okay, you can include all the units, you can run all the buildings, check those boxes, and now you have the annual occupancy report for your buildings. It tells you your residents, your search, your rents, your yes, no, ages, income, rent, all of the information is right here for you. You can look at all of this before you even hit submit. So that way, if we say, well, you had a rental overs. No, I didn't. Right here, it tells me I'm good. No, I didn't. You can look at it. This household income and rent status, this is the one you would look at for rental and income overages, okay? So it has the income limits, it has the effective date of the income limits, It has whether or not they were below income limits, whether they were below rent limits. All the information is right here. You do not have to rely on us to tell you. It's right here. So like I stated to the other individual that asked about incorrect income limits, as long as your development is set up to be able to test based on the MTSP limits, when you pull this report, it will be correct. As you can see, the 2020 income limits are already in the system, so that is not the issue. And from there, that is it. There is not anything else different, like I said, with COL. For those of you that have master user rights, and what I mean by master user rights, you have the ability to be able to assign projects to individuals, okay? That's done up here, on-site managers. So you have the option to manage your on-site managers. So these are my on-site managers, and I can go in and manage their logins, because again, we do not set up logins for on-site staff. So please advise your on-site staff to not contact us in regards to their logins, because we do not set up logins for on-site staff. We only set up and reset logins for the master user only. Okay, we get bombarded with so many emails from property managers and compliance agencies, compliance managers that, if I'm locked out, I can't get in. I'm sorry, we can't do anything for you. We cannot help you. You have to go to the person that is the master user for your company. We cannot help you if you're not the master user. We do not reset passwords. We do not set up logins. We do not assign projects. It's only for the master user, okay? So I have a question to repeat what I said about the SRD transmission. There is not an SRD transmission. There is not a transmission process for the SRDs. The only thing you would take off the SRD is the tenant information at the top and the rent utility information in the middle. And you will enter that information in as a new cert for the tenant for that unit. But there is not a SRD transmission process. You do not send us those documents. Okay, do not send us the SRD, do not send us the T. Please do not. Can you show where you went for the reports again? Sure. So on your project screen, go to your project. And at the building screen, you have this tab right here that says support reports. So you'll select the building and hit reports. And you have two reports. You have the annual occupancy report, and then you have the household income and rent limit status report. Okay, for clarification, if an XML file is submitted, none of the building data is touched, correct? Only the AOC Part A is updated and submitted. That's not correct. If you submit or upload an XML file, okay? So if you go and you upload the XML file, okay? So the XML file uploads successfully. And so all of your tenant data gets updated. You still have to go to the building and you still have to make them ready. So you're going to go to the building, proceed the units, you still have to make them ready. So although the XML file will fill in the tenants, the household, the socials, all of that, it'll fill all of that in for you, but you still want to check behind it to make sure it's correct. Okay, you do not want to just upload and say, oh, it's good, and then don't worry about it. You still want to check and make sure that everything is correct. The easiest way to do that is to go to the reports tab like I showed you here. Go to the report, pull the report, and pull this occupancy report, and just browse through it and make sure everything looks good, that everything has been updated, all of the certs have been added. Just browse through it and make sure everything is legit, okay? Once that's done, go into your building, proceed to units, ready all units. So you make sure all the units are ready, this column here. Once that's done, go to the building and then submit. So even with the XML process, you still have to do your checks and balances, check behind yourself, make sure all the information is there, ready all of the units, and submit the building. Again, with the on-site managers, on-site managers is where you will set up your managers, where you will unlock projects, reset their password, disable them, remove them, delete them. All of that is done in on-site managers. To assign a project to a specific manager, you would go to project assignment, okay? And then you would select the particular manager, and then you would check the box beside the project you want to assign to them, and then hit update. And so now, Tammy Smith and Jane Doe is both assigned to Mississippi Housing Development. So when they log in, this is the only development that they can see. Rebecca Jones can only see Clark Vegas, Technical Assistance Log, and ABC Apartments. Tammy and Jane Doe will not. They cannot see none of these. They can only see Mississippi Housing Development. All right, guys, that is pretty much it. Like I say, yes, COL looks different, but as you can see, it still operates and flows the same. Do we have any questions before I end the webinar? And then if anyone wants to stay on after I release everyone else for me to go over anything, I will be more than glad to do that. You're most welcome, A. Wilson. Let's see, question. For UA changes, if a unit research from January through April, and the UA is one amount and then it changes in May, do we do a modify of that rent change for May on top of their regular research? You do not have to do a new research, okay? So if they have a UA change, you do not have to do a new research. You do, however, have to document the utility allowance change. And then, like I stated earlier, you have two options as far as the UA change and COL. Like I said, right now, the way the system is set up, if you enter a UA change through COL, you do have to do a new cert. That's the only way to enter the UA change and COL. If you choose not to do it that way, like I stated, you will have to send us both utility allowances, the one from January through April and the one from May, and then make sure that we can easily identify that, okay, from January to April it was this, and then from May to December it was this, and then in COL, make sure that COL has the most current, okay, the most current utility allowance information in there so that it tests the building properly. That's the biggest thing with UA changes, is making sure that it is being tested correctly and based off the correct numbers, okay? So you want to make sure COL has the most current information so that it is testing your buildings correctly, and you won't run the risk of having a rental overage because it's testing on the wrong information. Sheila, I am not repeating the last hour. I am so sorry. Okay, you're more than welcome, Anne Marie. I can't pronounce your last name, so I think that's Erica. You're more than welcome. Monica, no problem. Jamie, no problem. Paula, no problem. Tootie, yes, ma'am. Donna, Tiffany, Sheila. Sheila, go ahead and just leave. I just need you to go ahead and leave. Antoinette, no problem. Tiffany, no problem. Innovis, more than welcome. Curtis Moore, thank you so much. All right, is there anybody that has any more questions? If there's anybody that want me to stay on, please let me know so that I don't get off, but just send me a message. Let me know you want me to stay on to show you something. I'll be glad to do that. Outside of that, if you have nothing else for me, you're more than welcome to leave. Again, this was recorded. It will be added to our website, hopefully by the end of the week. The program bulletin will also be added to the site before by the end of the week with all of the forms. And if you guys have any questions, please don't email me. If you have any questions, please email them to your compliance officer. There are 4 of them, okay? There are 4 compliance officers, so please email your questions to them, please. Yazoo Estates Apartments. Did you have a question? I see question marks. Did you have a question? Shania McKay, and I apologize if I butcher your name. The recording will be added to our website. So the entire recording of this webinar will be added to the website. Thank you, Sheila. I appreciate that. We are replacing our playground equipment. How should we report it? You don't have to report it if it's being replaced. It's only if you all just disposed of it altogether and removed it from the property altogether. But having it replaced, you don't have to report that. All right, is there anybody that want me to stay on before I end the session? Curtis Moore, I honestly cannot say when our next training is. I guess as soon as COVID gets out the way, we'll be doing a lot of virtual things up until then, but I'm just like you, I'm ready to get back out there too. It's starting to get a little lonely. But yeah, we're working on our calendar for the year. Like I said, right now, we haven't had anything scheduled for training wise right now because we, of course, are reviewing everything on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, Chip, I got you. I'm gonna send you a virtual lunch after the training. So yeah, we're still looking over our calendar for the year for training. But like I said, you know, with everything still being so crazy like it is, it's more than likely going to be virtual. But yeah, we're working on that. But anytime your management company, you know, desires to have a specialized training, we are and have done those before, and we will and can make that happen for you. You just have to send me an email, let me know what it is that you all want, and you know what it is that we can do for you guys. And we do provide those as well. Like I said, we've done it for a couple of management companies over the last couple of years. And a lot of management companies do not know that that's available, but there is an option available to your team. So if you have a management company or you have a set number of employees that you would like a one-on-one personalized training, like I said, just let me know. There is an option available to you. And we can set something up and put something together to what is specialized specifically for your needs. So just let us know. Shania, my internet dropped when you did move outs. Can we go over? Yes, I will stay on. I'm just gonna say Miss McKay because I really don't want to butcher your first name. I'm gonna stay on. I'm gonna stop the recording now.